Clarissa the Cannibal was not the first archetype my family has encountered, but she is certainly the most interesting thus far. Before Clarissa, archetypes were pesky little creatures akin to real animals like bats, spiders, and my personal favourite, toads. They were all humanoid, of course, but none were quite as human as Clarissa, which is what inspired me to begin the archetype files, to better understand where the archetypes my family encounter come from. In this entry we'll be discussing the cannibal archetype, using pop culture examples to better understand how this archetype works. Let's start by explaining what a cannibal is. Cannibalism is the act of one creature consuming the flesh of a creature from the same species, in this case humans eating humans, if you can consider archetypes humans. This can be for many reasons such as desperation, starvation, spiritual practices, or even for pleasure. It's this last one that seems to fit the cannibal trope the best. Cannibals are depicted in media as monsters who enjoy eating the flesh of their victims. This description fits Clarissa well. She certainly seemed to enjoy taking a bite out of my brother's arm. She had a lust for his flesh. There is an element of fetishization to the cannibal in media, especially to cannibal women such as Mrs. Lovett from Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, 2007, where she is depicted as a vision of white Victorian beauty, who hauntingly seduced her customers into eating human flesh baked into pies. She doesn't eat the pies herself and instead inflicts a kind of second-hand cannibalism onto her customers, something that Clarissa tried and failed to do with my parents. By doing this, she deflects her monstrous side onto others, allowing her to continue her actions without guilt. Guilt does nothing to serve cannibals. To be a cannibal monster, you must own your cannibalism and take pride in it. This is what separates the desperate from the monstrous. One example in popular culture of a cannibalistic woman owning her cannibalism is found within the song Cannibal by Kesha, 2010, which twists a young woman's sexual appetite for men into something that should be feared. She's a woman who, despite wanting to harm men, men flock to her out of their desire to be with her. Kesha becomes a siren to her victims, luring them in before drowning, or in this case eating them. This vision of cannibalism is often confined to the white experience. The original cannibal trope was a racist caricature of black and indigenous communities, crafted by colonizers in order to paint the communities as being dangerous and deadly, something that must be tamed, when in reality cannibalism was a rare sight, and if present was only performed in specific circumstances, such as through ritual or a necessity during famine. It was never done with the malicious intent we see today in media. The white cannibal comes in two forms: the grotesque backwards poor southern cannibal family who hunt their victims for sport, and a more sophisticated upper-class cannibal who selects their victims based on their own twisted moral code. The best example of this is of course Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs, 1991, a cannibal that speaks eloquently and expects a certain level of respect from anyone he talks to. If he is disrespected, he has no issue with allowing his primal animalistic hunger to overwhelm him. This concept of unleashing the animal within is one of the elements that make these characters appear the most unsettling. Even when they are not actively chomping on a meal of human steak, you can tell just by looking at them something isn't right. The white cannibal trope has become a metaphor for the vileness of white colonizers, who have now taken the place of those they originally forced the trope upon. The southern cannibals especially are an embodiment of the collective racists that still fester in the US South. They hate outsiders and stay within small groups, picking their victims off one by one. Modern depictions of cannibals are undeniably gross, but the origins of fictionalized cannibalism, as I'm sure you'll agree, is far more sinister and gruesome. To summarize the cannibal archetype, cannibals look just like everybody else, but there's a coldness and disconnect within them from the outside world. They are animalistic and struggle to control their desire for human flesh, which is the source of their power. When hungry or provoked, they drop their civilized facade and ravage their victims. The best way to defeat them is by beating them at their own game, by outsmarting them. Their ego is their biggest weakness. Show them you're in control and they can be overpowered. If you don't, then they will move on in search of their next meal. Clarissa the Cannibal may be gone, but the threat of another cannibal archetype emerging in the future is real. We don't yet know the logistics of how archetypes work, so as long as the cannibal trope lives, we must use our experience of Clarissa the Cannibal as a guide to how we defeat future cannibal archetypes. It's this exact reason that makes these files a must. For now, my family don't know I'm writing them. They don't know a lot about me, not even what my powers are. I will keep hold of these files as a secret between myself and Anakin, my faithful toad, who my family also don't know of. My eyes are always open, I see all, and I will always use my gift of sight to help those I love from the sidelines. May I never have to fight an archetype myself.